We started the show asking the question and talking about Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated and ESPN's Heather Dinich and Adam Rittenberg, each with stories on portal windows and NIL changes. And I think it's still a very confusing time, not only for fans, but for coaches right now as well. They're looking for some guidelines and stuff, and we're going to try to dig into that a little bit in this segment.
Yeah, we hope to get some answers on what you could expect at least in Tuscaloosa next. We'll do that on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Don't forget, they got the two great locations, I-65 exit 304 in Coleman, exit 334 in Decatur. And you can check out that new Clipper Ultralight 182 DBU bunk model from Coachman. Payments as low as $179 a month. See them for details. JohnstonRVCenter.com. On that hotline now, let's talk to Phillip Stutts. Phillip is a guy that he's an entrepreneur, he's a businessman, but he is also involved in the High Tide movement, the collective there in Tuscaloosa, and we'll talk to him about that. Welcome in, Phillip. Hope you're doing well today.
Hey, good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Pretend Jim doesn't understand this at all.
Oh.
And in layman's terms, as best you can, explain to us what the High Tide Collective is.
It's a great question. Let me give you some background and lay this out. So, I had lunch with Coach Saban about 6-7 weeks ago, and basically he said, I want the collective to be in compliance and give all players at the University of Alabama an equal opportunity to make money on their name, image, and likeness. So there's a lot of chaos, right? I kind of talk about there's a war going on the NIL side, right? Like from that conversation, we've gone out and implemented the High Tide traditions, but we're not coordinating with the university. I haven't talked to coach since then or anybody, but the war that's going on right now is you're seeing these stories. You talked about Ross's story yesterday, but there's an absolute war with all these universities creating these collectives, and there's a ton of issues and problems. And the only thing that we can do, like at High Tide Traditions, is to try to build this the right way, under compliance, in a very different model than everybody else. The best example I can give you, or metaphor for this, is we're probably all around the same age. I'm in my late 40s, right? So do you remember when we were little kids and the news would come on and they'd say, hey, today the Boston Marathon started or kicked off, and it would show the start of the Boston Marathon, and you would see this scrappy white kid running out full blast ahead of everybody else, and then he trips and falls or whatever, the crowd catches up to him. And in a way, that's how a lot of the collectives you're reading about are acting. They're running out full steam ahead, and they don't realize they're in a marathon. And that, what I keep saying more than anything else, is that this collective entity we're really in an 18 to 24 month marathon, because in about 18 to 24 months, everything will settle down. There may be federal legislation, there may be NCAA legislation. What exists with NIL collectives in the next 24 months? And I'm telling you, and I'm happy to walk through it, the model that these other universities are doing right now is a house of cards, and it will absolutely collapse on them. And I can give you examples. I can tell you all about how it's going to work. So at High Tide Traditions, we just said we're going to be doing this completely and totally different. We're going to build a data and analytics model that's more like in the Moneyball approach than anything else. And here's why. The business owner that employs a player to endorse their company, product, service, whatever, has to make money. That's it. Because if the business owner makes money, then the player keeps that contract a lot longer, and they can maximize their opportunity to make money on their name, image, and likeness. These entities that are running out throwing massive donor dollars at this without any ROI, return on investment, is a house of cards. It will collapse. Because you saw what happened in Miami, this donor Ruiz came in. I think it's Nigel Pack and Isaiah Wong. Or y'all
absolutely. We talked about it, and it's interesting.
The player went, hey, that's not fair. And now Isaiah Wong revolted, and then it was a slap down, but he got something, right? What happens when the season, let's say the football season starts, and you're going to see this all across the board, the unfairness of the fact that a player got a massive amount of money. Ooh, by the way, they may be second string now, And then all of a sudden, the players are going to be upset. They're going to see the inequality. They're not going to be happy. The other thing is what happens when that donor that funds that player says, how come he isn't starting, and starts trying to call the coach or the AD or whatever it is. And it's all a house of cards. It doesn't last. And not only that, the last thing I'll say on this is this. Every donor out there or every business person out there that goes to university is getting called on by their university to give money every year to the scholarship fund, to their tickets, to their box, to their whatever. Now you've got them calling on NIL, right? And after about a year or two, that business man or woman doesn't make any money on a player because they're just told, you just throw some money at it. They're going to be like, what am I doing? They're not in business to lose money, guys. They're in business to make money. And no one is talking about this. This is what nuts to me. Like, I don't understand it. Like, how come we aren't talking about how this affects the business owner and the house of cards that's being built with this donor-led, donor-centric model? It's not going to last. It's fraught with so many different problems. And ultimately, what we're trying to do at High Tide Traditions is no matter what the NCAA does, or no matter what the federal government does, because they're going to come up with something soon in the next year or two, we have to fit our model into that box. And that's what we're going to do. So we maximize the player opportunity to make money, and it's sustainable over the long term. And it creates the standard, the highest standard possible. So players are like, I want to go to Alabama because I know that deal is legit.
With that said, Bryce Young, best player in college football last year, won a Heisman Trophy. We heard in July he had already made 7 figures on NIL. You talk about return on investment. I personally didn't see Bryce Young endorsing anything. So how are whoever invested 7 figures on Bryce Young getting that ROI?
So he probably did those deals before. I know he did those deals before the collective was established. He did those deals through CAA, his agency, which he can also continue to do, right? So my point, Lance, is a good question, is I don't know because I don't work with CAA. I know what we're doing at High Tide. And the other thing to keep in mind is this. The deals are going to fall in Bryce Young's lap, right? But there are a massive majority of athletes at Alabama, student athletes at Alabama, that have high social media followings, have an audience, but no one really knows them outside of that. And so the way we're approaching this, and this is going to answer your question, is that I have a partnership with the largest data collection analytics and AI company in America. And in the database I work in, we have 230 million American consumers, 550 million connected devices. We're tracking 10 billion online purchasing decisions every day and 1 trillion searches. Mm-hmm. And so I can tell, like we're working with the Atlanta Motor Speedway right now. And they said, we want to find some players, but here's what we want: high social media followings, and we want NASCAR fans. Awesome. We can do that. But then we're going to go into the state of Alabama and go in and look in our data and track Alabama fans. We're going to track Alabama graduates, football fans, NASCAR fans. We're going to merge all that data together. And then we're going to be able to produce for the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Here are the players that are the most profitable for you. Here's the messages you're going to be using in your ads. Here are the platforms you need to be advertising on. And we're going to be literally playing a money ball game with the way we utilize the athletes so the businesses can make money.
You know, I'm interested. Is High Tide Traditions, is it just for football? Or is it basketball, softball, the whole athletic program?
It's the whole athletic program. It's a good question. Thank you for asking that.
Phillip Stutts is with us, and you can follow him, by the way, at Phillip Stutts on Twitter if you would like. He is the founder and CEO of Win Big Media, and he is working with High Tide there in Tuscaloosa. He's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I want to break out something you said in your opening answer. You said one of Nick Saban's desires was equal opportunity. A lot of people looked at that and read into that High Tide's tradition would, for lack of a better term, set a base salary for every player, and then you earn above that whatever you can generate. Is that a misperception of what you guys are trying to do?
No, I mean, I think we want to find endorsement deals for the players, again, that maximize the leverage of the business owner. But at the same time, all athletes in Alabama need to have leverage to stay. Like literally, we're in a free agency game right now, right? So how we develop how all athletes at Alabama can make money, whether it's a minimum. I mean, there's an initiative about your GPA being a certain level, you get like $6,000 a year. So we are looking at all of that that's in place, that's legal and compliant. But ultimately, Ryan, like we're trying to figure out how we're doing the deals with as many and all players, with all student athletes as possible, so that they can maximize their profit potential. But how that all exists and what that, like a minimum threshold, we're still in these early phases of this thing. And my charge is to go find deals that help the players make money. And that's what we're trying to do. And by the way, I'm not a donor either to this collective. I'm not donating to this collective. This is not a donor collective. And so what we're trying to do is build a model that brings businesses in to make money more than anything else, and then gives the players the max leverage to make money on their name, image, and likeness.
And Phillip, you talk about the early phases, so this might be an impossible question to answer, but a lot of people want to know the answer to this. How and when will the market correct itself on this?
It's going to correct itself, and I believe it'll happen in the next 18 to 24 months. I mean, obviously the NCAA came out with, you read Ross's article, and they're talking about making an immediate move, but like, how long does it really take them to do that? Right? Is it 2 months, 3 months? And then what's the enforcement on that? There's this federal legislation, Lance, that's been in place that's kind of been stalled. Like, just a little background. I'm probably the first person that ever went on ESPN to talk about NIL. Yeah. And I went on in studio in New York with Feinbaum in the summer of 2019. And I said, here's a nuclear bomb that's about to go off in college athletics. And everybody went, yeah, whatever. Right. And the bomb's gone off. And your question is now, what's the fallout of that? And, at the time, as this thing progressed into 2020, Mark Emmert and all these people were like, well, we're just going to wait for the federal government to give us the guidance. Right. And then COVID hit. And then everything got stalled. And basically Washington, D.C. and Congress basically went, screw off NCAA. We got other priorities right now. And so that's where we still kind of stand. I believe that, here's the thing. You are going to see player revolts or player discontent this fall. And I think that pain from those universities that are feeling it is going to force the hand of either the federal government or the NCAA or both.
Do you feel like Nick Saban and maybe some of the more power programs right now are on one side of the fence, and the programs who are trying to catch up to the Alabamas of the world are the ones that are running out to start the Boston Marathon? Is Nick Saban and the way he's wanting the collective to work in a much smaller group than, say, the masses of Power Five?
I don't know. It's a good question, Jim. I just don't know, because I'm not paying attention. I'm reading the articles like you are, but I have no idea what Texas A&M, Texas, Miami, USC are doing right now. I know that they're running, or in Florida too. I know they're running around screaming how much money they've raised. And I also know, because I come from the political world, right, that a lot of that is not true. A lot of that is just to get get everybody in the media talking about them and getting players to go, well, I want to go there because I can make a lot of money. And I keep going back to this. Ultimately, here's the example. How many times have we heard fans say, why don't they give that player for that professional franchise a $350 million contract? The guy's a billionaire. I can tell you, right, business people don't just lose money even if they're billionaires. They don't look at it like that, right? Rarely do they. They're the outliers, but that's it. And so ultimately, the donor is not going to continue to give unless they can figure out a way that it makes them money. And again, if let's say Tennessee goes 5-6 this year, do you think that donor is going to continue to give? Do you think those players are going to get the kind of money that they got initially when they ran out ahead of that marathon? And the answer is absolutely not. It's going to collapse on them. And so the only way to do this is to build it in with the intent of having a sustainable collective model in place.
We had Brandon Marcel on the show yesterday, and he said you're not going to see a Missouri or Arkansas become a power because of something like this. But I look back to a guy like T. Boone Pickens at Oklahoma State, who has since passed, and he seemed like one of those billionaires that would just give money if he could win a championship. Do you think there is going to be an outlier program that gets really good based on this?
I think you would have an outlier program get really good at this. Correct. Do I think that it is the majority of universities? Let's say there's 7 or 8 that are out there right now that you're reading about. Do I think all 7 or 8? No. Do I think it's 1, maybe 2 have a good run? Of course, right? But let's say Jimbo Fisher decides to go somewhere else, right? And now you got chaos in that program. No donor is going to step up in that moment. The players are going to flee everywhere because they're going to be like, hey, where is, what is the money? Who's the coach? I don't want to be here. I need more sustainability. I need something that I know is in place. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just giving you that example. Lord knows Jimbo's going to start going on the media now and calling me out. But that's the point of what I'm trying to say, right? Like, you have to build, like, you're 100% right, Lance. There's surely there will be an outlier. But ultimately, most of these guys are going to pull back and go, hold on, this isn't my player is, my player is not starting right now. The guy I funded, I'm going to call the coach. I'm going to call the AD. Do you know what a mess that's going to be?
Kevin in the chat room says Phillip is making too much sense and being too logical, which means nobody will listen to him. Do you feel that way sometimes?
Can you tell how passionate I am?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, because I see things that no reporter is talking about. None. I see every story out there and I'm like, why aren't we talking about this? This doesn't make sense. And no one's talking about it. And so I have an avenue to say, look, it's going to be done differently in Alabama. And in the next 18 to 24 months, you can expect to see Alabama at the top of the heap. And you're going to see a lot of the early gunslingers and the early sprinters out there fall away. And another thing kind of goes back to what Jim or what you were saying, there are going to be schools right now that could step up and be in the top 50 of, the universities. Maybe 50 come out of this thing, shake out over time. But there are so many people that are scared to death to hop into this thing. And there are so many, I've now taught to 6 or 7 different universities from Power 5 to lower. And they're all like, yeah, I don't want to deal with this right now. And I'm like, well, dude, you got to get into it. You got to figure this out. It's happening. It's, there are, in politics, we have a funny saying, there are things that are facts and there are things you can change, right? A candidate's spouse is a fact. You're not going to change the candidate's spouse, right? If they have an opinion, you got to listen to it. So the NIL and building this, whatever way you want to build it, it's a fact. You're going to have to go for it and you're going to have to do it. I'm just saying there's a proper way to do this that's going to shake out in the long run and be the standard.
Follow Phillip on Twitter if you like, at Phillip Stutts, winbigmedia.com. He is the president and CEO, founder and CEO of that organization. Phillip, it has been enlightening. We greatly appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
All right, take care. Phillip Stutts with us. Talking about the High Tide Initiative there. He is on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.